This is Center Stage, putting your firm in the spotlight by highlighting business owners and other industry experts to help take your firm to the next level. Hey everyone, and welcome to Center Stage. I'm your host, John Henson, and this week we're back talking about the importance of showcasing your expertise. We here at Spotlight Branding, we talk about, just the power of referrals, and the best way to do that is through the content that you're creating and really making it obvious how you're able to help people so that they can send the right people your way. And so specifically for this week, we're going to talk about just how you can show off that expertise through various events, courses, maybe some webinars, online events, in-person events, something like that, where you are front and center and really showing off that knowledge. And so joining us to show us all the ways that we can accomplish that is someone that has helped several big names, big corporations over the years, businesses, small and large, do this. And that is Nancy Giere. Nancy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show. I'm really glad to be here today.
Yeah. So expand on that a little bit. What's your background? How did we get to this point where, you're helping people out with stuff like this?
Okay. Well, my background has been in working in training in one form or another for, 30 years. And I've helped, as you said, mention organizations of all sizes. And I have been in the business of what's called instructional design, which is a methodology that people use to build courses from idea all the way through to implementation. So it's a real specific methodology and approach that allows people to be more efficient. And I started working with people that fall into the thought leadership and entrepreneurial space last year. My observation was that anybody with a computer can create an online course, and that's a good thing. But it's also a bad thing because there hasn't been necessarily a lot of thought or design put into it. People kind of panic like, oh my God, the world's changed. How am I going to get my message out? What am I going to do? I know, I'll just do these webinars and I'll record them and I'll put them up there and then I have an online course. No, you have a recording.
Right.
And because there are some differences when you look at a well-planned online course. The videos are short, they're crisp, to the point. There's activities that you're going to have me do along the way. It's not just, I'm going to, watch a TV show for 45 minutes, right?
Yeah, exactly. So kind of what I like to do in these is I like to start way up, really broad, and then, kind of drill down as we go along. So, broadly speaking, we kind of touched on it at the beginning, but why truly is it so important for business owners to share that expertise?
Well, much of it goes back to the whole idea of people will buy from people that they know, like, and trust. And one of the best ways that you can build that up is by sharing your expertise. We're at a point where there's a lot of you need to give in order to get. And if you have a specific expertise and you're willing to share what you know, so I would imagine that many of the people that are in your network here, they probably have a specialty. Maybe they're doing intellectual property, whatever it might be. So if they offer some courses, let's say, that talk about, well, what do you need to do to protect your intellectual property? Give people kind of an idea of why is it important? Here's some simple tips that you can do. Now, when they're ready to take action, they're likely to hire the person that shared information that ties into what they do. Like, I want to hire you because you seem to really, number one, know what you're talking about, and you understand my type of business. Right. There may be some people, if they work in a particular niche, if you can share, well, what do you need to be concerned about it for your type of business? What do you need to do to protect yourself? What do you need to do to watch out for? And oh, by the way, I'm the right person to help you make sure that all of that is in place. You're building loyalty before people are necessarily ready to completely engage. Particularly smaller businesses sometimes wait, I think, before they get their attorney, they get their CPA, which probably they wait too long. But
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we talk about, especially in the marketing world, I think that a lot of businesses and business owners, they're focused on just going out and hunting for leads, and they're just so concerned about getting leads in. But then what they often fail to do after the fact is like nurture them along, and I think, courses and, other kinds of stuff. And I'll ask you about that here in a second. I think it's such a great way to nurture those people along, because it's like, okay, cool, you got them in your pipeline, but like, how do they know at that point whether or not you're the right person to work with? And I think, this is the obvious way to do it.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a great, use the term lead magnet, right? It's a great way to bring people in, and it's a lot of work to get somebody on your list. So once they're on your list, you want to keep offering them information and not just, always the pitch. It drives me crazy. Somebody reaches out to me on LinkedIn, and then within 5 minutes, they're giving me their pitch without really taking time to even ask me
right
more about what I do.
Exactly.
Or what I care about.
Right. Yeah. So, we talk about courses, and let's really center in on that, because that's kind of your main area of focus. I mean, how can a law firm create a course for people who may be on the fence about whether or not this is the right attorney to work with them?
I think it's, first of all, to take a look at what are the types of problems that their customers potentially encounter, what are their needs and wants, and to really look at how does their expertise align with helping to solve those problems. That's the first step to get people kind of where they live, and to put things in place that demonstrate an understanding of that particular type of business, or whatever the concerns might be. It's always the challenge is always, how much do you give away, right? And how much do you hold back? And another part I think can be very useful in any type of professional services firm is, what are the questions that you get all the time? Yeah. What happens that you need to say over and over and over again, and perhaps happen quite a bit in a discovery type of conversation? Well, what if you pulled some of that information together and you bundled it into a program? Here's the top 10 things that you need to know about. You can go here. These are the questions we typically get about. Here, you can go and look at this, and you could even, be sending that out in advance. And if then the prospect goes through that, then when you have the conversation, you're ready to go at a deeper level, because you've clarified things like terminology, right? Yeah. Just what's the lingo? What does all of this mean? I'm in I'm running a store here. I have no idea what all this, right? There's all this legal jargon that I haven't had to think about or consider. And you can clarify that. And another great thing is, you can clarify it in a way where somebody isn't going to feel foolish. How often have people been in a situation where they're like, I should probably know what that means. I don't want to ask the question right now because I don't want to appear foolish.
Right.
So you can do some level setting.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's funny is, like, we have not talked about this beforehand. So, if you're watching on video, I had a really big smile on my face, because you said something that is ultimately what our strategy is to help people generate content. It's, what are those questions that you get most often?
Yes.
And you generate blog articles, you create videos around it. But to bundle all of that into a course, it's like, well, how do I start a business? What are the legal steps to starting a business? All of a sudden here, you can put together a course, however in-depth or as long as it can be. And all of a sudden now you have a lead nurturing tool that, I think, to put it bluntly, I think it's like, you get people to a point where they realize that they're not smart enough to do this on their own. So obviously you are then the person that they want to work with.
Right. Exactly. That's what it is. And to help actually create the business case. Because I think oftentimes, and I'm thinking more of the entrepreneur, more people in the startup space, is there's this fear of not, what do I spend my money on? And they have to be able to balance that with, well, what's the best use of my time? Am I
Yeah.
better off to get this type of help
Yeah.
and, focus my attention on perhaps generating more revenue, or, or to not wait until, oh no, I got a
Right.
problem. And then of course it's, your efforts to save just
Yeah.
backfired on you, because it's going to cost you more to get out of trouble
Yeah. And,
than to prevent the trouble.
right. Exactly. Yeah. And one of the things that I noticed, several years ago, when sites like LegalZoom and like some of these other DIY sites popped up, there was this little bit of panic with smaller firm owners where it's like, okay, well, we're now getting commodified. We're going to be losing business to people who just want to DIY it yourselves or themselves. You can create these courses, and now all of a sudden you can kind of combat that. And so like one of the questions that I wanted to ask you,
Mhm.
and I don't know how much of this that you've seen, but like, could this also just be something that you can incorporate as a service that you offer, where it's like, hey, here's our course on how to craft your own estate plan or how to start a business. And it's like, we'll step back, we're here if you need us, but here's all the tools. And now all of a sudden you still get business. You're taking business from those DIY sites, and you're still able to keep things going, and you're still kind of accomplishing that goal. Is that something that you've seen, or is that something that you would even recommend people do?
I haven't for this particular market seen that, but I have seen a lot of people, they have within their own group a do it
Mm,
yourself option.
yeah.
And the idea being that at some point people are going to go, this is not something I can do on my own. They're going to realize where they need help or to set something up and say, here's the template, here's the paperwork you need to complete. So you could maybe teach people the real basic part of it, just
Yeah.
name, address, right?
Right.
Give them the basic part, and then offer to say, we'll do a review
Mhm.
before you submit. So if somebody wanted to do a trademark application or something like that, yeah, you can do that
Yeah.
on your own, but you maybe try to, do that and then have somebody come in and review. So you can look at maybe, having a tiered service level,
Yeah.
because it could very well be that somebody that comes in as a do-it-yourself type of a client over time would have the potential to grow and require more support. Just myself, I started that when I hired a bookkeeping firm.
Yeah.
I was doing quite a bit on my own. And then I said, okay, we'll just do it. Next moved up to a level of, well, I'll just do a retainer for a certain amount of time. And now it's like, I just need you guys to come in. I need you to be there with me every month so that it
Yeah.
all, and support me. So I kind of, in my own, that's one situation where I slowly grew, and they
Yeah.
did some great things for me along the way. So I did have a sense of loyalty to them, because they met me where I was, and were willing to, to work with me at different levels. So I've seen the tiered approach in that business. I haven't seen it on the legal side, but I have seen it on the accounting side.
Yeah. And in your defense, the legal space is very slow to adopt things like this. We had a guy on, I had a guy on a couple of weeks ago, and his whole sort of business model is a subscription model. And that's right now that's unheard of in the legal world. And he's, he has a whole system set up. His whole business model is just subscription tiers. And it's kind of like what we were talking about. Like, he can review documents for flat fee every month and all that, just on an ongoing basis. And so, I, as we were talking, I could kind of envision this scenario, where, especially if you are really niched down and you've really focused in on one area and you're branding yourself as the expert in this, a great way to really exemplify that is to create courses, whether it's in the lead nurturing stage or maybe even as part of an overall service model. And all of a sudden now you can like move people through this. You can even make it fun. You can give them a little certificate when they graduate, and all of a sudden, and just have like all of this stuff to create that stickiness and that connection to where they see you as the expert and that you helped them through it.
And subscription model, it seems like you can get a subscription to just about anything today. So
Right.
why not for legal service?
Exactly. We're all getting more and more conditioned to just, that's how we conduct business on the consumer
Yes.
side. So, it makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about the actual course creation, and it's something that I've thought about creating on my end for some of our audience. We have a DIY marketing kit that we give away on our website. It's pretty basic in the sense that, and how it moves you through the process, and a lot of it's like optional steps. It's more just like a bundle of resources than it is an actual course or anything like that. But I really want to develop a course. So let's say, for people out there, they know what they want their course to be about. They want to know how they're going to help people. Where do you start then at that point? How do you get the wheels turning on designing this course? Is there like a program you recommend, or some sort of other process? Where do we start?
Well, there's I kind of walk through a process, and the first thing would be, as you described, is to do a scope. Okay, what is it that I believe that I want to cover, and who do I want to do it for? So you kind of look at the what, and then you look at the who. Then the next step would be to do some primary research with your target audience to confirm that the idea that you have, they're going to buy it. You don't necessarily want to, I don't believe in selling it and then building it, because people underestimate sometimes how long it takes to build, especially if building the course is not your primary work and you have other things to do. That's where people get tripped up in the completion. So to really get an idea, and I was working with someone the other day, and she had an idea. She does a lot of work with copyright, being part of it, and wanted to put something together all about how to protect yourself. And we were in a group. She just happened to be, in this focus group. It was part of the course that I was teaching, and put the idea out there. And everybody in the group said, that's important, but I also want to make sure that I don't do anything that I shouldn't do. So I want to make sure that I have not used an image or music or whatever inappropriately. I'm interested in that. And that was really good feedback for her to understand, okay, they need to look at it both in the creation process, and then once it's built, how to protect themselves from other people coming in. So having that opportunity to do a focus group or interviews to validate your idea really helps a lot, because you'll find that you'll probably tweak it some. Then the next thing is to look at, well, what topics then would fall into this? And that could be done through just simple brainstorming. You can make a list. You can use the old, I got stacks of them all over the place, Post-it notes, stick them on the wall, kind of organize things and see, okay, this is now what I believe I want to have included in the course. And then bump that up against any content that you've already created. So you can look at, here's what I believe needs to be in the program. Here's what I already have. It could be a blog post. It could be another a webinar that you did. It could be a presentation, anything. It could exist in any format. And then you can look at it and you can say, okay, now I know what I want to build, and I know what I have to repurpose, and I know where there are things that I have to start from scratch. So then that gives you the picture of kind of what the work is going to be to do. Then the next step is to look at, well, turning it into a course design. And I live in 2 columns, and I'll just put in one column, here's what I want to cover and the order that I want to cover it in. And then the second column, I'll go, okay, well, how am I going to cover this? Where am I going to tell a story? Where am I going to give them a tool to use? Where am I going to put in some type of an interactive or an engaging activity? And when you do that, you essentially have a design blueprint. And then from there, you can execute and start creating all of the different components. And that's like instructional design in 10 seconds.
Right. Yeah. And, and that's honestly, I think, one of the biggest, if not the biggest aspect of it, is just kind of building out that whole framework and that outline of where you want to go. And so I guess my other question, because like I've taken like some basic courses in some other areas on a website called Udemy. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a gigantic website. You can go and learn just about anything you want to on there, but it's all the same thing in my experience, where it's a series of videos, anywhere from 2 to like 10 minutes long. And then at the end of each video, you answer questions before you're able to move on to the next one. In your opinion, and what you've seen works, is that a good formula to follow? Should you mix up the kinds of media that the course has? Do you do questions after each piece, or do you let it build up kind of like in a traditional sort of school setting where like you have a final exam at the end that kind of covers everything? What does that structure look like?
Well, the platforms out there, for the most part, that's kind of the structure that's there, is that there's a video and then you do something. And it could be a quiz, but what I think is more important is to give people an actual exercise. So let's say I'm working with somebody now, and one of the first things she talks about is a positioning statement. So it makes sense that the logical activity would be for them to do a positioning statement. And when you're just kind of in this online format, you can only bump up what you write against what the examples are. But you could take it to another level, and you could add in, perhaps you have a private Facebook group and everybody gets to post it, and you could go in and you could look at them and you can review them and give feedback. And we always have to be, mindful of how we're going to use our time. So it could be, I will be in the group providing feedback on assignments every Tuesday from this time to this time, or maybe add in an office hours component and say, I'll be live to talk with you from this time to this time. So you can kind of protect your time, because the challenge, I think, with these online offers is it's hard to give people on certain types of activities a good feedback loop for them to know that they're doing it correctly, or if they need to do some type of improvement.
Yeah.
There's also limits on the amount of interactive types of exercise that you can put into place. Have done some work with larger clients, and we use a tool called Articulate Rise. And when we use Rise, what we do is you can create interactive exercises. So you can have cards, like think in front of somebody, and the card maybe has a term on the front of it. You flip the card and it tells you what the definition is. So you're clicking around and you're doing things, which it increases the engagement. But whatever you're doing, the key is to just keep mixing it up so that it keeps changing. Every time something changes, that's interaction.
Yeah.
That's interaction.
Right. And I want to go back briefly, because you mentioned something that I think is very important. You briefly mentioned that you can absolutely take old content that you have published before and include it in the course. And I think that that's really important, because I think a lot of people are still in this mindset that, like, every piece of content has just a very specific lifespan and a very short lifespan. And I disagree with that. We talk a lot about evergreen content where, it's more or less more surface level, especially in the legal world, because you just don't want to run the risk of like a law changing and then you have to go back and try to find everything and revise it. But that is another benefit of that sort of evergreen content, is that you can recycle and repurpose it into things like this. That then makes your job a lot easier, because you're not having to then create a bunch of extra content on top of it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So you've written an article on a particular topic. Well, you just rework it, you tweak it so that it has more of an instructional feel. And then perhaps you add in some type of an exercise or an activity that they would look into that particular topic in a way, or if you want to do a quiz. But we write, I think, a little differently for different purposes. But I believe that when you're doing your training, you want it to be conversational, like, hey, I'm talking to you.
Right. Exactly. So kind of the last question I have around this is, how do you end it? Like, is there like, what's the, what's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for this? Why? Finish? Yeah. What does someone get for completing the course? It's really, as much as we want to, it's hard to sell some sort of physical indicator of like peace of mind, because a lot of times, especially in the legal industry, that's what you're ultimately providing people. But, is it gamified in a way? Like, how do you ultimately end a course and reward someone for completing it?
Well, it's different. A lot of people really aren't rewarded. They just, they go through and they're done, and maybe some balloons go flying.
Yeah.
There is the satisfaction of completing something. But if you want to add something a little bit more fun, maybe there's, a prize or a giveaway. It could be something as simple as, everybody, maybe if people are going through as a cohort or something, you could say, hey, the first 10 people that complete are going to get into a drawing for a gift card. So you can add something kind of fun or something, a small gift. The gift, it doesn't have to be a big gift. People just like winning stuff, It's like, yay, I won.
Yeah. But but maybe, is it even necessary? Are people even expecting that? Or is just that process of going through the quiz and getting to the end kind of self-motivating enough that there is no expectation of that at the end?
I think the expectation is at the beginning, you're offering some kind of a tangible result. And you're saying by the end of this course, you're going to be able to, and maybe you're going to be able to file for a trademark. I'm just picking something. You're going to have all the tools you need so that when they're done, if they can successfully do what you promised, that's a win.
Yeah.
If they feel like there's any, holes or gaps, then it wasn't a satisfactory experience. So you want to make sure that kind of what you offer on the front end, that when they're done, that's what they're going to be able to do. And you always want to be asking the question, what will people be able to do? What will they know? How will they feel when they complete the course? And have that filter on as you're building it out so that they can get to some degree of success. Because I don't think there's an expectation of a fabulous prize. I think there's an expectation that you're going to solve my problem.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I mean, this has all been really helpful for me personally. Like, this is one of the episodes where I get a lot out of it too.
Oh, good.
A lot of times, we're talking about, obstacles and challenges, that business owners face as a whole. I'm not the business owner, but like, I still do some things, in and around the business. And so a lot of times, it's more just me learning, but this is one of those where I have some ideas now floating around for how I could do something.
Terrific.
So this has been really helpful for me, and I hope it's been helpful for all of you out there. How can people get in touch with you and potentially get some help in designing a course of their own?
Well, my website is nancygiere.com. And if you were watching, you can see it's just my name with the .com, and you can email me at nancy@nancygiere.com.
Awesome. Yep. And I'll have that info down in the show notes. So feel free to contact her for that. I have one final question for you. It's one we ask all of our guests here on Center Stage. And it's if you had one final piece of advice to our listeners, what would it be? Be
intentional in your design. Really look at what's the delivery method that you're going to use, and plan your course so it'll work great for the delivery method you choose, whether it's online or offline.
Awesome. Love it. Yes. And I mean, user experience and just the flow of everything is really important, because if people can't figure out what they're doing, or it's too difficult to navigate, they're going to give up, and then, you may end up losing that business.
Yeah. And then that's right.
Exactly. So awesome. Well, that was really great. Thank you all for continuing to listen, leaving ratings and reviews wherever you're consuming the show. And that's going to do it. Nancy, thanks so much again.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks for listening. To learn more, go to spotlightbranding.com/center stage.